you, Truth. So, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I want to talk today about what's going on, but also relating to relating to the spirituality of it all. How many of you remember going back to 2008? We had a huge conflict in Middle Eastern nations, and there was a huge economic downturn. That was about 2008. And we had these people lining up on the gas stations with the inflation adjusted. The gas price at the time was similar to what we have now, over $5. I think the gas price right now is over $5 or $6 here in the case of California. It's outrageous. It hurts at the pump, and it's kind of ridiculous. This is the world event, and it affects commodities such as gas prices, money, financial, material things, shipping. So I feel as if as we advance as human beings, with the internet, with social media, we are that much closer. The boundaries of nations and the boundaries of race and people have come closer, and it's irrelevant, it seems to me. So, of course, we are having this immediate reactions. There's a crisis going on with Russia, Ukraine, and Russia is a huge oil producing country that affects supply and demand. And with the fear and the greed of the corporate world, we have one of the highest gas prices in the world, one of the highest in the nation, in the history of this nation. And I know offhand that I know Hong Kong, they're paying $10 right now per gallon of gas. So it really does hurt. And and also we see it on social media, on TV, everywhere we turn. We're seeing the conflicts, and we're feeling the pain like we have never felt before. This started going back to Vietnam War. It was one of the first war that the TV journalists were with camera were there, which is one of the main reasons that he kind of failed. And I believe the same thing is happening in the crisis in Ukraine with Russia. We are there. We are seeing it. We are feeling it. We are hearing it. And we know through social media with friends, connections of other people that might be affected by it. So it's terrible what's going on. But, I also want to go back. I remember as a kid, third or fourth grade elementary school, back in Korea, one of my best friends' dad had to go to Vietnam because they sent soldiers in Korea to Vietnam as well, because U.S. enforced it, and they had to go. So he was there for about a year, my best friend's dad. And I remember him telling us, receiving a letter from his dad saying that he'll be home within a week or 10 days or so. I mean, he was happiest I have ever seen him ever. A week went by, 2 weeks, a month. He never came home. There was a day before he was to leave Vietnam, there was a bomb and conflict, and he passed away. So that I've witnessed and felt the torture, the horror on him, on his mother, on his sister. It changed things forever in their family dynamics and years to come. It affected me. It affected all of our friends. So that's what I remember about Vietnam. And as a little kid, in my child mind, I couldn't really grasp the war of nations. So I thought, when people are talking about Vietnam, I'm hearing Vietnam on TV, I thought Vietnam was a place where people go to fight for whatever reason. I didn't realize it was a country because I'm hearing so much on TV. Excuse me. So, we have to realize that we know already that what happens during the war in a nation of a crisis, not only people get killed, not only people get maimed and get hurt, it affects the nation, it affects the people, it affects through social media, through TV, it affects the whole wide world. So it's similar to the laws of cause and effect. So here we talk about in the past about a spiritual law and the physical law. And one of the laws that is cause and effect. So whatever happens, there's an effect. What you reap, what you sow. What you sow, what you have to reap. You have to pay the price in everything that you do. And that's part of the law that we have to realize. I remember last week in our Power Lines newsletter, those of you who are getting, I put something in a newsletter about one of the writings from the teachings of the Silver Birch. Silver Birch is through a medium, Maurice Barbanel in England, back in 1920s and 30s and 50s. He was a spiritual being that gave Maurice Barbanel, the medium, many messages, and these were dictated and written down, and it's become books. One of the things that he said, and I quote, "Wars are not made by the Great Spirit. Disease is not given by the Great Spirit. These are the things that the children of matter," that's us, children of matter, "have brought upon themselves by the misuse of their free will. There are lessons to be learned, but they can be learned without the brutalities and the hideous cruelties that the children of the Great Spirit perpetrate against each other. Do not mistake the doings of man for the acts of the Great Spirit." Basically, it's saying, don't blame us. This is all on you. You guys are doing this. Don't blame us. We only come to show you the law of the cause and effect. So then one can ask, and now people have asked during suffering and such crisis in our lives, we reach out to our spiritual beings, God, our infinite intelligence, and we reach out for their help. Why? And then sometimes we wonder, why can the Great Spirit stop this horrible war, crisis, suffering, disease? Why can't they just stop it? And if they are so omnipotent and powerful, why can't they just stop it all? And like Silver Birch says, with all the brutalities and hideous cruelties, that is not needed to learn a lesson in our lives. But before I answer that, let me take you back again in time. This time, 2,500 years ago, about 500 BC. So there was a man named a Buddha. Many of you know, in India. So Buddha was a Hindu priest in India back in then. His name is actually Siddhartha Gautama. He rarely saw any suffering, anything bad until he was about 29 years old, because he was protected in the royal palace where he lived in India. Of course, we know, and still is to some aspect, outside of this royal walls, there are sufferings. There are poor people, there are people diseased, people are dying. There are fighting going on from villages to villages, constant war and bickering. So he saw all this suffering, and he was really, really hurt by it. And he, as a prince, he felt that he wanted to do something and at least find an answer to all this suffering. So some events later, he mainly meditating under a tree for so many days, 49 days, or he understood the four, what the Buddhists call the Four Noble Truths. Now these were kind of downloaded messages from the higher beings. And quickly, let me just talk about that. One of the Four Noble Truths is that one, life is suffering. Second, the cause of suffering is craving. And the third, the end of suffering comes with the end of that craving. And then finally, there's path, which leads one away from this craving and suffering. So let's talk about the cause of suffering, what he witnessed. Because he says, Buddha, and rightfully so, that people cling to and obsess over and insist on permanent things, matters, possessions, or ideas, or their ideas, which they think is the right idea. So these cause sufferings around villages, around the nation, around the world. And what do? Nowadays, we define ourselves by our jobs, our titles, money situations, family dynamics, and our possessions, house, cars, trips. And then we crave these things. So this craving of physical matter brings about the suffering everywhere and chaos, which I believe is what's going on when there are conflicts in the modern world with a war. So one can end these chaos and craving by redirecting your energy to something better. In Buddhist theory, there are the eightfold truths or eight spokes of learning things that you can. It's sort of like our Declaration of Principles or 10th Commandment, whatever you want to call it. So through these teachings and these learnings, we can redirect our energy from that craving, from that obsession, and use this energy for something better, for love of mankind. So Buddhism teaches these things as a philosophy, so much that in spiritualism, spiritualism is a science, it's a philosophy, it's a religion. But if you look at the religions around the world nowadays, not many religions nowadays teach the teachings of mankind, how to love. But it's their energy is more directed towards we are right, our way is correct. No, you cannot have that. So these are what's going on around the world. And so much that with the current modern world, the setup that we have, the cause and effect is immediate. Something happens, a bomb goes off in a hospital in Ukraine, we know about it in an hour. We see the horrible things displayed on TV and social media. And the pictures of mom and little babies dying on the streets and so forth. We see it, we hear it, and we can feel it in our heart. Most of us, as an empath, as a spiritualist, it bothers us, it pains us, and these are the cause and effect, that immediate things that we are noticing. Now, if you talk to the leaders of the world, I don't think they're understanding such cause and effect. I'm sure they understand it in a different way. But, after 2,500 years, we are still learning. And it's incredible that people can cause so much harm and suffering. And these things are displayed and the cause and effect. The gas price that I talked about earlier is one good example of cause and effect. Something happens here, here's an effect. Immediate. That we can feel it affects every one of us at the gas pump. I don't want to demean all the sufferings of people with the gas price here, of course, but I'm just showing that as an example of the cause and effect, immediate cause and effect. There's actually a little bit more that Silver Birch talks about the war and atrocities, and the question was brought to him through media, through people around the sittings, that what's going on? Why cannot they stop? The gods are not stopping these wars. And this is what was talked about. And I want to read a little bit about that. Silver Birch says, higher spiritual being, do not think that the world can escape the consequences of its actions. We, them, cannot alter the law. What has been sown must be reaped. You have sown selfishness, you must reap the results. Pride, jealousy, envy, greed, malice, distrust, suspicion, all these things, when they fructify, produce war, distress, and discord. We, the spiritual beings, who strive to express the law of the Great Spirit, are often criticized by those who do not understand the purpose which is behind our coming to your world, when the Spirit comes with a message. But we only seek to reveal the law. See, they're saying that they are showing, here it is, here's a book, here's what the writing about the law is. You have the free will. You can do whatever with it. But we come here to show you the law. It's a law. They cannot stop it. They cannot change it. The laws are immutable. Spiritual laws and the physical laws. Have you gone to somewhere? We are bound by gravity. It's a law of gravity. Have you been to somewhere where there's no gravity in certain areas? No, it's a law. It happens. You cannot stop it. So, and that's what they're talking about. Whoever it is, whether it be one or the many, the race or the nation that seek to live against the law, they must pay the price. I, the spiritual beings, I have always told you that the law is perfect in its operation. Sometimes you do not see the fulfillment, but I know that cause and effect always follow each other because it is the law. I have always told you these things. That is why I tell you again, there is nothing but the law of the Great Spirit. We seek to reveal the Great Spirit, but we can only reveal Him, spiritual, through His laws. We seek to teach you the law so that you may live your lives in harmony with that law. Yours is a free will to choose. So they're not going to dictate what you have to do. Whether it is free will of the one or the many nation, it is the same. So if it's one person is doing something malice or bad, there's a cause and effect for that one person. If a nation does, and the cause and effect is so much greater, perhaps, until your world learns that it must plan with the law and not against it, there will be chaos, bankruptcy, disaster, and ruin everywhere. We can do nothing but teach you the eternal principles of the Spirit, because they are the enduring things that remain long after that which is material decays and crumbles into the dust. So the material ideas and positions and what we're fighting for, it will just become dust and it will just decay. It'll be gone. Man whose eyes are cast only on the things of matter makes a great mistake, because he chases illusions and forgets eternity. These are the simple truths, but your world has not yet learned them. So he goes on to say, and just want to close with, free will is a gift of the Great Spirit. But if it is not used all right, then the price must be paid. If the world lives with the law, it reaps the benefits. If it lives against the law, it reaps the results. One way brings peace and happiness and plenty. The other way, misery and war and bloodshed and chaos. So these are the words of Silver Birch. But, as a spiritualist, we know we are familiar with, some of you are familiar with many laws of spiritual laws, as well as physical laws. And the war, the immediate cause and effect, we see it, feel it, hear it, you can live with it. So these are the horrible things that man has to learn as one man or nation. And as a spiritualist, I feel that as boundaries of borders and things get so irrelevant, that we must, as a spiritualist, as a loving human being, we must spread such understanding of these laws. And I feel that, we have 9 declaration of principles, and some of the wordings in the principles are so much similar to what the 4 truths, noble truths in Buddhist things were. And I skipped over the 8th noble truths. And it's interesting because in that 8 teachings, it's right use of words, speech, right thoughts, right attitudes, right mindfulness, right disposition, and these are the teachings of the 8-fold truths, noble truths, similar to our declaration of principles that we can live by every day, 24/7. So I'm hoping that, after 2,500 years, we haven't learned a thing. We still have this declarations of principles. It must be there because people are not following its law, spiritual laws. So I'm hoping, along with you, that in 20, 30, 50 years, maybe 100 years, we won't have 9 declaration principles, but maybe 2 or 3, because none of them we don't need anymore. People already know. So hopefully that day will come soon where we don't have to do that. So remember, everything that you do, small or big, one person or nation, that there is cause and effect. And we have to understand that law. Thank you.